one more person walked in late, and I have to mention Paul Lown. He's called a Riverwalk poet. He writes prolifically, and he's got a book he gives out. Did you bring any books with you today?
I got a few with
A couple
me.
books he may give out. He gave out some last time. So, if I have to describe this group in one word, Rick, it's eclectic. We have an eclectic group. It's nonpartisan, but it's definitely eclectic across a number of interests. And it makes us always interesting. So, well, thank everyone for coming. Eddie, go ahead. I know you got it.
No, I was just going to comment to Cory on something.
Well, I know it's going to be some kind of trouble, so go ahead and tell us all of it.
Talking about the power of the sheriff, right? When I was recruiting for the Army in Louisiana, I had a young guy that wanted to join the Army, but he told me he had a DUI, which means I have to run a police check on him and then get a waiver to try to get him in. So I went down to the county where he had a DUI, where he lived at, and I met the actual sheriff of that county.
Eddie, did I get you to stand up here, please? I want to hear what you got to say. Buddy, so we can pick up the bill. Got your tie on today.
I got my tie on today. So I'm sitting there with the sheriff, and I say, hey, I have such and such a young guy here. He wants to join the Army, but he's got a DUI here in your county. I need to get a police report on it. So he said, what's the kid's name? And I told him. He looked over at one of his deputies. He says, isn't that old Amos Fry's boy? Yeah, he's a good kid, man. He'll make a good soldier. Go ahead and put him in. And I said, yeah, but I've got this police report here. I mean, this form I have here. I need you to fill it out explaining what his legal issues were. He said, don't worry about it. He said, he's a good kid. He's like all the rest of us. He's a little rambunctious, a little rebellious. You know, we had to slap him down a couple times. But basically, he's a good kid. Go ahead and put him in the Army. I said, you don't understand. I said, once you arrested him and fingerprinted him, his record went to the FBI. So when I put him in the Army's going to run a background check through the FBI. It's going to come back had a DUI, and that's going to create all kinds of problems. He looked at me, he said, boy, and I'm quoting him, I don't normally use profanity, but the FBI don't know a damn thing what I do with my accounting. He reached over here and grabbed this big old notebook, it's about that thick. He said, everything stays in my notebook. Nothing goes anyplace else. He reached in, found the guy's record. He said, shh, 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 shh. The boy ain't got no record. Put it in.
I challenge anybody in this room to show me in the U.S. Constitution where the FBI has the authority to even exist. I mean, does anybody know why the FBI was founded? Why they started the FBI?
Carry on
Prohibition and FDIC insurance. There is no constitutional authority to insure bank deposits. So there's no reason to have the FBI for that. Prohibition's been repealed. So why do we have the FBI?
Because once a government agency, always a government
Exactly.
agency.
So, but my point is that there's no, if you look at the Constitution, the FBI has no authority to, neither does the DEA, or most of these other law enforcement. There really are no real policing powers in the Constitution. That's supposed to be a state function. So the idea that we have just accepted, well, it's the FBI. You know what? I'll tell you what, go to hell. You have no right. You have no right. We're a sovereign state. We should act like one. And I have all the faith that I need in my sheriff. That he's a good man and he does what's right to the best of his ability.
Well, Cory, I think you made an excellent point with the fact that it doesn't always necessarily have to be an absolute confrontation.
No, it doesn't.
In order to make what you're talking about work.
Right.
And
it doesn't. That's the thing.
And we can chip away at that federal power by things like you mentioned about the thing in New Mexico.
Right.
Where, if it came down to it and somebody was going to arrest somebody, we might have lost that one. But on the other hand, you got some guys that have a little bit of gumption and can stand up, and we won that one.
Well, I guess the thing is I think it's high time we act like men and be willing to make a stand and say I'm not backing down. I mean, what do you have in life if you don't stand for anything? If you just say, oh well, the feds threatened me, so I guess I have to just cave and do. Give it all up. Give it all up. You don't deserve freedom. I mean, so, yeah, I agree, it doesn't have to come to a confrontation, and I hope it doesn't, I don't want any confrontation. But I think it's imperative that we understand that, confrontation in that respect is not a bad thing. We're not creating a constitutional crisis, we're bringing to light the one that the feds have already created. We're just saying we don't know. We expect you to abide by the Constitution.
Cory, I think you're saying, there's one thing we all agree on. Everyone in this room thinks the federal government has too much power, in general. I think everyone agrees on this. That's what we want to agree, especially in terms of what we call the Republican principles, not necessarily the Republican Party label, but the principles on which it's founded, which is the platform of the Republican Party and the creed of the Republican Party. And we all pretty much agree on that. Even people that call themselves Democrats agree on a lot of these things. But, you know, a lot of times the devil's in the details. It's hard to get people motivated when they're so comfortable at home watching TV and they're getting checks from the government. And we don't have, and they can print money out of thin air. We don't, you know, we've got inflation that's been expanding as the Ponzi scheme that Bill talks about oftentimes. And Bill, I think everyone in this room, except for maybe Buddy, who else? Paul may be retired, is paying your retirement, right? You know, dovetail over onto your, before we leave, you're gonna tell each one of us that we gotta continue to pay for your retirement. Is that what you're?
Yeah.
They know it.
Well, you're mentioning too about all the different places that the federal government has usurped power of the states. And it always amazes me to think that less than 100 years ago, when somebody decided that it was the federal government's job to regulate people's alcohol intake, they actually cared so much about the Constitution, they went ahead and amended the Constitution.
Let's give a round of applause to Kenny Bean for coming.
Thank you, Captain. They actually felt like they had to amend the Constitution rather than doing the Obama route or heck, you know, the Bush or the, I mean, you know, certainly not a province of the Democrats to violate the Constitution, although they've kind of pioneered it. Right. But if they actually went ahead and amended the Constitution just for that one law, so they could pass that one law so it would be constitutional,